She did, and but we've been there for, as I said, a little over 7 years. We love what we do. We're just trying to punch holes in the darkness up there in the north, and there's a great opportunity to do that, and that's why we're here now. I'm trying to find Hispanic church pastors and planters. So if you speak Spanish and you want to plant a church up north, talk to me. I want to help you do that. We can get you a place, and we can help fund you and get you started and get you going for about 3 or 4 years, and then turn you loose. So we want to do that. We are excited about that. We've added about 111 churches in Michigan since I've been there, and we're just seeing God do some great things, and it's a joy to be in ministry. I had never, as I used to say, who'd have thunk it, that God would have us where we have been, and Sabrina and I where we have been, and in Michigan. Our 2 boys who were here when they were very young and very precocious. They are 5 granddaughters, and they are awesome. Those grandgirls, and by the way, girls are different than boys, I found out. But we love those, our sons and daughters and our granddaughters. And one is in Kentucky. Micah, the oldest, is in Kentucky now. And the youngest, Aaron, is in Colorado. And so that's kind of a brief history of our life. Thank you for being such an important part of it. You indelibly marked our hearts and our souls while we were here. Great ministry. Great time. Thank you. Thank you. Well, take your Bible, please. Let's turn to Philippians chapter 1. Paul, the Philippians, he is imprisoned, and he's trying to write something to him. Now, you think about this. If you're in prison and you don't, and if you're writing a church and going to tell them something, don't you think that church ought to listen to what he is saying? Well, this is an important location that Paul is writing. And he begins, and I want you to look in chapter 1, look at verse 9, 10, and 11. And he has a prayer here that he is praying for the church. And he begins in verse 9, and this is the prayer. He says, "And this I pray, that your love still and more in not argument, that you may things that are excellent, that you may be and without offense till the day of Christ, being filled with the fruits of righteousness, which are by Jesus Christ to the glory and praise of God." See, something was different. He not that way as he walked. Fully inebriated. He was drunk as a skunk. And he came down. And finally, the pastor just stopped the sermon and said, "Can I help you?" He said, "Yeah, please, Pastor, would you pray for me? I just need somebody to pray for me." So the pastor thinking, well, I'm not going to be able to move on. He said, "Dear Lord, I just pray for this man who is drunk." He said, oh. You know, like that, we think that God doesn't see, doesn't hear every thought we think, every word we have, every plan. Don't you think it would be a good idea to run them by him first? Paul, notice what he does in this prayer. Look at verse 9. He says, this I pray that your love may abound still more in all discernment. Paul is praying. The word there that is used for that abundant, it's a unique word in the original language. It means to overflow its banks. It's really the very structure of the word. It was used in reference to a river that came in too far, or a river that was overflowing, and it moved out beyond its banks and began to fill. Sabrina and I, when we lived in Florida, we lived in an area that was along the St. Johns River in Florida. The unique thing about that river in Florida, it flows north. One of the only rivers in North America that does that. It's a major river, flows north, and the problem is that when that river and that water, Florida, and when it does, banks. There's one little town that we love to go to called Green Cove Springs. And it was a beautiful place. It just had nice parks and right there along the riverbanks. And it was a pristine town. It was just a gorgeous place to go. And so we said, let's go look at that and see what happened. We're gawkers too. Everybody, we go gawk after a storm or something. We wanted to go see what had happened. So when we drive into town, the first thing we notice, there's water all over the streets, everywhere. And so we drove. And I stepped off into that St. Augustine grass, and all of a sudden, it just was bubbled up. The water had so saturated and filled it was just like walking on a sponge. Whoosh. It was with water. That's what this term is talking about. And he says, I want your love to be like that. I want it so spread out and so infuse everything and everyone around you that it saturates your heart, your life, your community with love. My friends, when a church is like that, when a church has that kind of godly love, when it really everyone and everything around you, you did not build a big enough church to hold that. You do not maintain that. People that. That's what your attitude changes. Let me tell you a principle I learned a long time ago. No one can give you a bad attitude. Now, some of you go, well, wait a minute, you don't know my wife. Nobody. Sabrina says, you don't know my husband. He gets cranky. So you choose the attitude you put, or might I? And God, my friend, attitude affects everything. If somebody goes around with a bad attitude, you know why? It's their choice. You say, well, I've had a bad well, attitude. Having a bad attitude will give you godly, not only godly attitude, it'll give you godly words. How you talk to one another, how you speak. You'll be much more encouraging. You'll be much more thankful, by the way. You'll be much more forgiving. You'll be much more. Just be nice to one another. For pity's sake, can't we be kind? anybody turn on the media nowadays? It amazes me that no one likes anyone. Everybody. My friend, when you have godly love that's saturating your soul, it changes your attitude. It'll change how you talk and how you speak to one another. Not only change your words, it'll change your actions, how you act. It's in the oil fields of West Texas, Permian Basin area. You say, well, what's the defining characteristic of Kermit? Sand, jackrabbits, mesquite bushes, and it's really hot. It's flat, and there's oil. It's where God sat down and made the rest of the world. It just looks like that. Well, we attended, after I became a believer, I attended a little church called First Baptist Kermit, Texas. Now, back in those days, it was very similar to what the auditorium over here in Odom is. You'd walk into an auditorium in Southern Baptist Church during that time. This was back in 1971, somewhere in there, and they would all be the same. Pretty much the same color pews. The platform was set up the same. You had 4 big high-back chairs everywhere, you know. You had the altar down front, the Lord's Supper table. You had, and there were their finest, and they had on their hats when they went to church on Sunday. The men wore suits and ties. The little boys wore matching suits and ties. The little girls stuck out a half a mile. They had their patent leather shoes. I mean, it was all weird. No, it's not. That was just normal. And you could intersect it at some time in the service and to be exactly the same. You know, the same song. Do this, and then you do the offering, the preach. It just done that way. He said, well, was that good? Yeah, it was good. There's nothing wrong with that. Just that's the way it was. In that particular church, I remember it was packed. All of a sudden, a guy comes in who didn't look like anybody in the church. He had long hair on his shoulders, a tie-dye shirt, beads. He had some kind of purse with frills hanging off the side of it, leather. And then he had blue jeans on, bell bottoms, and no shoes. The bell jeans he'd worn so long you could take them off and stand them in the corner. You know, I mean, he was a hippie. But the defining characteristic was he had a Bible in hand. And as he came in, he tried to find a seat. And all the little ladies in the back looked at him, they're not letting him sit by them. No. And he kept looking and trying to find a seat. And no, you could hear him as he kept moving forward. It was like little hives of bees had been released in the back. They were talking, and you could hear them. Man, they were just not happy about this situation. And the farther he came, the louder. He kept trying to look for a place to sit down, and nobody would give him a seat. And so he just sat down on the floor. Then the senior deacon got up in the back. He was 90-plus years old. I know you have a gentleman here 90-plus years old, but he really gets around good. This guy was barely moving, and he kind of like this, and he started down there, and you could hear him start saying, well, finally somebody's going to do something about this. This is just terrible. He'll take care of it. And so the old deacon got down there, and he finally got near the young man, and he put his hand over on his shoulder and did like this and said, and then he sat down beside him, and they worshiped together. You see, when you have an abundant, godly love that saturates your life, it'll change how you act toward other people. They may not look like you, speak the same language you do, be the same skin color as you. They may be a Democrat or a Republican. They may not be anything. But when you have abundant godly love that saturates your life, you will accept them as they are and lead them to where they need to be. Where we serve in the northern part of the United States, it's not the South. Just want to let you know that. Not far from us, 15 minutes from us, is Dearborn, Michigan, where the largest density population of Arabic people outside of the Middle East reside. You literally drive down the streets and the signage is in English and in Farsi, Arabic language. They all dress in the Arabic attire, most of them, some in full habib, the ladies, and it's just a different world. You say, well, how do you feel about those people? I feel that those people are those for whom Jesus died. And they deserve to hear the gospel just like anyone else. And when you're saturated with the love of God, you're going to approach those kind of people just like you approach anyone. That's why I was saying if a church ever has that kind of love saturating it, your buildings are not big enough to hold who would come. You get this abundant godly love, get this advanced knowledge. That's what he's wanting. He says that your love. He would only want knowledge and empowered knowledge. Notice the word he used there. He said more and more in knowledge. That is a word, it's really a compound word that's built upon the other. It stacks upon the other. It says so much knowledge, it just builds one on. Concerning things, I want you to have a godly knowledge that's saturated with a godly love. We have too many professors and not enough possessors today. We have way too many who are academically astute and not humbly empowered. He said, I want you to have discernment. See that last word in that verse? He said, really an accurate discernment. That word discernment there is almost transliterated into the English language for the word aesthetic. Aesthetic, something that is beautifully appeasing or right and good. It's just got a goodness about it. He says, I want you to have discernment. And true discernment is having knowledge that is saturated in God's love, that's really founded in the things of God, but it's discerning as well. And when you have the Spirit of God filled certain things that are important. But notice his purpose. Look in the next verse. We saw his prayer. What's the purpose of that prayer? He says, this is why we're praying it. That you may approve the things that are excellent. That you may be sincere and without offense until the day of Christ. Why? That goes along with that word discerning, but approving it. And so we will be able to choose the things that are the best. You say, Ed, I don't have a whole lot of problem discerning between what's good and bad anymore. I've gotten that down pretty well. I know what's good, and I know what's bad. I try to do what's good, but sometimes I do what's bad. My determining which is good and the very best. And as a believer, good and bad, but you may be faced with a choice of choosing what is the very best. You see, that's when you know you're walking in the power of the Spirit. That's when you know you're filled with the Spirit of God. It's when you can choose the best out of very good things. He said that be able to choose the best and to continue blameless. There are two things that happen here in these words that are, I think, are very unique. He says, I want you to be able to choose that which is really good and discern which is what is right and make these decisions that are sincere and without offense. Those last two things, sincere and without offense, he's saying not only be able to choose the right things, but to live those things out. One part is to be able to do that which is inwardly right, sincere. Now, I'm going to give you the exact translation of the word sincere, and you are going to be blown away. You are going to be so excited you came today. Because when you hear what this is in the original language, you're going to just go, oh, that is amazing. Here's exactly what that word translates from the Greek language into English language. It means to be without wax. Now, aren't you blessed? You're going, my ears are okay. What are you talking? What? Without wax? What? Well, when you put it in context of how it was written in cultural relevant, where it's relevant in the culture it was set, in that particular time, you didn't just go to a store or a place and buy a metal pot to cook in, or a vase, or a vessel to drink from. You went to the agora, or the open market area, and they had vendors there who would sell clay vessels. And they would make those vessels, you understand, they take a wet clay and form it to whatever they want, and they dry it, and then they put it in an oven and heat it and bake it until it hardens, and they take it out, and then they'll glaze it and cover it and sell it for whatever vessel they've made there. Now, the problem was that an unscrupulous vendor or potter, when he's making his vessels, sometimes they would get too hot or have too much moisture in them, or the content was just not right. And when in the baking process, they would crack and they would get holes in them. And the unethical and dishonest potter would take it out. Instead of throwing it away, he would take wax and fill and then paint it and sell it for a whole good vessel. But the discerning buyer would always take a vessel before they would purchase it and hold it up to the sunlight. And when they held it up to the sun and turned it, the sun would reveal if there were any wax filling the holes. Thus, to be sincere is to be without wax. You're not faking it. You're not trying to cover up the holes in your life. He said you're being honest, transparent. You're not a crackpot. I mean, that's it. He said if you really continue blameless inwardly, that's inwardly. But the next word that was used there, he said not only sincere, but without offense. That's an outward thing. So to be pure outwardly as well. The term there means to not cause someone to trip or fall by your actions or attitude or what you do. That your life in such a way that you're not causing someone to fall or trip over you. Now, where we live in Michigan, everyone thinks that Michigan is nothing more or less than a NASCAR circuit. They drive like they're in a big oval, except it's not an oval. They're just right behind you, 100 miles an hour. They drive like crazy. They're crazy. They're terrible. You just have to adjust to it. The story is told that this lady had pulled up to a stoplight, and she was more elderly, but she still wanted to look good. So when she stopped at the stoplight, she said, well, I've got time before my meeting, and I'm going to reach in and get my lipstick out of my purse and do my lips. Well, first of all, You know what a woman's purse is like. If you do, that's a dangerous thing. It's a dark cave. My wife carries tire tools and jacks and things in her. She just carries everything in it. You need a suture kit, she's got it. It does. But this lady was digging her purse, and a guy pulled up behind her when she was at the stoplight. And while she's looking for her lipstick, the light changes from red to green, and she doesn't realize it. And she's still looking for her lipstick. Well, the guy behind her, he's starting to go, come on, old lady, what is wrong with you? He just, he's getting mad and upset, and she doesn't move. She's still digging. And then next thing you know, he starts honking his horn and banging on his wheel, and he sticks his head out. What happened? And about the time she looks up, and she's looking around, and the light turns red. And she then looks at her light, and she goes, oh, it's still red. And she digs in her purse some more. And so she looks up in her rearview mirror and starts doing her thing, and the guy behind her has gone off like a Roman candle. He is just throwing a fit. Bang! Screaming at her. She's just going, what is wrong with this guy? And then finally the light turns and she drives on. Well, as soon as she drives on, he takes off. And he's right up behind her, and he looks in his rearview mirror, and he sees those lights flashing, the blue. He pulls over, and the first thing does, he sticks his head out. The officer said, sir, please, just give me your driver's license registration, please. Sir, please, just give me your driver's license and registration. So he hands the officer the information. She goes back to her squad car. She gets in and runs his tags, runs everything, and he's just in the car. You could see smoke coming out of his ears. It's just going on. And she finally comes back up to the car, hands in the driver's license registration, and he says, I didn't do it. The reason I stopped you was not because of anything like that. He said, but I saw all of those bumper stickers on the back of your car that said, honk if you love Jesus, I love Jesus. And honestly, I thought the car was stolen. None of us act like that, do we? None of that. You see, when you have an abundant godly love that saturates your life, it not only affects you sincerely, that you're not faking it on the inside, but outwardly you're not doing things that cause others to stumble over your life. It's a good prayer so far, isn't it? You say, how can I do this? Pastor Tim, I struggle. It's not easy living like I'm supposed to live. It's not easy being a believer 24 hours a day, and it's just hard. I don't have the strength to do that. How in the world? That's when Paul continues to pray. And he says, let me show you how. He gave us his prayer in the first verse. He told us the purpose of it, this next verse. And now look at the next one. He says, here's the power. Here's the power to do it. Being filled with the fruits of righteousness, which are by Jesus Christ to the glory and praise of God. Friend, there's no way you can do this in the flesh. There's no way we can live like this on our own strength, in our own abilities. We fail every time. We must have his Spirit filling us with his fruits of righteousness. The love, the joy, the peace, the long-suffering, the gentleness, the kindness, the goodness. All this. And he knows it to be filled with fruits of righteousness. As I told you earlier, I have 5 And I know I've spoiled them, and that is my job, and I do it well. And Sabrina has done a better job than I. They love Grammy, and they love Grammy. Two of them, the ones who lived in Colorado, we kept them early on in the years, in their early young years, and then as they've gotten older, they always want to come be with Grammy, not Papa. They want to come be with Grammy during the summertime, and they want to spend 2, 3, 4 weeks with us. Well, before Grammy goes to the grocery store, Kroger, we have a Kroger there, H-E-B type, she buys it out. And then she'll go to Costco and buy it in bulk. And if they don't have it, Sam's Club does. And she just buys everything. I mean, it's just amazing what the woman buys. A serious buy stuff. And things that we just don't. But one buys that we don't buy, and I don't care for, and it's just weird, she buys a thing that they love, and they're called Pop-Tarts. Now, some of you are going, I don't know what a Pop-Tart is. Well, a Pop-Tart is a shingle that they put in a plastic bag, and they wrap it, and they paint it a little bit, and they sell it to kids. My granddaughters love Pop-Tarts. And you look at a Pop-Tart, take it out of this bag, this cellophane thing bag, and you open it up, and I'm serious, folks, you can take, and it's just, it's hard. And they put some icing and some sprinkles on it, and that's supposed to make it good. And I'm going, are you kidding me? Now here, I'm going to tell you, I found something out. This is so cool. You're not going to believe this discovery. You can take a Pop-Tart, hard, crusty, nasty looking, and when you break it open, it's full of fruit. Is that cool or what? That should be us. I'm a pretty hard and crusty old guy at times. I don't look that good anymore. Never really did. But I'm praying that I'm filled with the fruits of righteousness. When I get broke open, it's not the gripey, crotchety old guy that comes out. It's not my flesh that takes over, but it's the fruits of righteousness that fill my life, that control me. Amen. Oh, how we need Pop-Tart Christians in our lives. Filled with the fruits of his righteousness. That's a pretty good prayer, isn't it? Folks, if we as a church, as believers of First Baptist Church of Odom, would just live the prayer here, God would do marvelous things in our midst. He would change the complexion of this place, and I believe this community, for the cause of Christ. Let's pray. Father, thank you for having Paul so insightfully and inspired pray a prayer and record it for us that we might emulate and live by. God, there are some of us here today that would say, I'd really like to do that, but I in no way I'll ever do that. Besides, I don't know anything about this fruits of the Spirit. I don't really know Jesus. I come because I like my friends here and I like the company, but I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure if I have Jesus in my life. I'm just not sure if I died tonight, I'd spend eternity in heaven. I'm just not sure about all of that. But I'd really like to know. My friends, I've got some good news for you from God's Word. He'll love you and take you just as you are. All you have to do is give up and give in. Maybe there's someone like that here today who needs Jesus. In just a moment, I'm going to give what we call an invitation. I'm inviting you to respond to what God is speaking to your heart. You say, well, I've been a member of this church for years and years and years. Well, it doesn't matter if you're a member. What matters is if you know him and he knows you. Do you have a personal relationship with Jesus? Just a moment, if you want to, we're going to pray, and you can come right down here in the front and talk to one of these men. They'll love to share with you in God's word how you can know without a shadow of a doubt that you have eternal life in Jesus. Also, in just a moment, as we pray and as we have this invitation, maybe God has been speaking to you about the way you're living. You're not saturated with his love. You're not living a life that changes your words, your actions, your attitude. You're not living in a way that's sincere, that's not faking it, that you're not living in a way that people aren't stumbling over the way you act and live. But you want to live the right way. This is a good time to start over. Say, God, fill me up. Fill every corner of my life with the fruits of your righteousness. He'll do it. It's all about giving up and giving in. Father, thank you for the attentiveness of people today. Thank you for them listening carefully. I pray, God, that your word does not return empty, but it would find a good place to settle in our hearts and lives. Lord, if someone needs Jesus today, I pray they'll come. They'll find it and know for sure. If someone needs a fresh filling, I pray, God, they'll come to the station today, get filled up completely, go out to live for you. So with our heads bowed and eyes closed, just for a moment, I want you to stand up if you would, please, and just quietly. I'm not going to come down and pull you down the aisle or anything like that. If we have our pianist, if she can play just a moment, just a little bit of song. And this is real simple. Just stand where you are. If you can. Now, if you can't stand, it's hard on your knees. I have bad knees too. I understand. Maybe God's spoken to your heart this morning. The only reason I have you stand is just make it easier to walk. If you need to let God into your life today, why don't you come on down here and talk to one of these men? They'd love to talk with you about that. If you'd like, you need Jesus just to take over and fill you full. You've been leaking a little bit. Me too. Come on down. Maybe you're looking for a church home, a place to plant your life and grow your family. I know they'd love to have you here at First Baptist Odom, and they'll receive you as they receive members. And whatever it is God has spoken, don't let this day go by having heard from him that you don't respond to him. Now is a good time. And just for a minute or two, we're going to give you an opportunity to do just that. You come right here, right now. Man, well, God bless you folks. Thank you for coming today, and thank you for the privilege of letting me be in your pulpit. I truly count it an honor, and Sabrina and I we think of you often and fondly. Love you all. Thank you. Bless you. You're dismissed.